Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third talk in our This is STEM live stream series. We're delighted you could join us and hope you're looking forward to the talk this morning. My name is Connor, and I work with Science Foundation Ireland on a programme called Smart Futures. For those who might not know about Smart Futures or Science Foundation Ireland, I'll give you a brief intro before we kick off our talk. Science Foundation Ireland is the Irish Government's largest competitive funder of scientific research in Ireland. In addition to funding excellent research and innovation, Science Foundation Ireland promotes and supports the education in and engagement with STEM. We promote an awareness and understanding of the value of STEM to society. Smart Futures is a programme of activity designed for secondary school students like yourselves and is managed by SFI. Smart Futures is all about providing information to students, teachers, guidance counsellors and parents about STEM careers. Choosing subjects to study in school and courses to a third level can be tricky, and figuring out what career you want can be overwhelming. Smart Futures provides you with the opportunity to discover what types of STEM careers are available, and there are many, and hear from people who work in STEM-related jobs in Ireland. To continue to connect with students during the current restrictions, we are hosting a live stream here on our YouTube channel on the last week of each month. Each month, we will discuss one of the 4 pillars of STEM. We began with engineering in February and continued with science in March. This month, we are discussing a career in technology and finally concluding with maths in May. Today, to celebrate Tech Week, we are extremely grateful to be joined by Niamh Donnely. Niamh is a co-founder of Akara. Akara is a healthcare robotics company with a mission to develop technology that empowers frontline workers. At Akara, Niamh is responsible for designing and writing software that allows Akara robots to operate autonomously. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat box. There will be time allocated for a Q&A session at the end. Before we wrap up the session, I will let you know about an opportunity to win a pair of Apple AirPods. So enough from me, I'm delighted to introduce you to Niamh to talk all about her career in technology.
Thanks so much for that, Connor. Hi, everyone. So my name is Niamh Donnely, and I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you a bit about my career journey and where I work. So just share my screen there. So I work at a company called Akara Robotics, and there I am the co-founder and director of AI and software. And I'm sure you can guess what Akara Robotics do. So we build robots. And I guess it's a relatively new company. We've been together just about 2 years, but the whole team have actually been working together for nearly up to 10 years. So Akara started out as a research group from Trinity College Dublin. So that was a group of staff and students that got together and were building robots to deploy in healthcare settings to try and help people. And eventually this group decided to spin out and build a company. So I guess when people say they're co-founder, it just means that they're one of the people that started the company. And I suppose I should tell you a bit about some of the robots we built. So one of the first robots we built was a robot called Stevie, and you can see Stevie down in the left-hand corner. He's a very popular robot. He made it to the cover of Time magazine and was also on RTE News and in the papers quite a bit. But Stevie's purpose wasn't just to be a celebrity. So the purpose of Stevie was, I suppose, to be deployed in nursing homes and to be kind of a social companion and to interact with people. And I guess a lot of you probably have grandparents that have been in a nursing home or maybe that live alone, and sometimes they can get a little bit lonely. So the idea behind Stevie would be that Stevie would be in a nursing home, interacting, playing games with residents and getting people kind of up and communicating with each other. And so to give you just a little bit of an idea of what a robot looks like in a nursing home and what our team work on every day, I'm just going to play this quick video. So this is a video of Stevie being deployed in a nursing home in Washington in the US.
Speak louder, Stevie.
Louder.
That's better. Good. Got a lot of old people here with hearing problems.
Baby boomers are turning 65 and over at a rate of 15,000 per day. We are woefully underprepared to provide the care that they need and require. If we can use robots and different technological solutions to automate mundane processes, it frees people up to be more human in the caring process.
My name is Stevie. Welcome to Oakwood. Let me show you around.
Stevie is what's called a socially assistive robot. And by this we mean it has the human-like features that allow it to interact socially with people. We see problems like loneliness, depression, and social isolation being endemic amongst this population. We think that technology has an important role in actually, keeping people happy in retirement communities.
What did the left eye say to the right eye? Between you and me, something smells.
When we're building the robot, we want it to be fun. It sounds like a strange design criteria to have, but that's what's emerged from years of doing focus groups with older adults and people who might benefit from this technology. They don't want something that's going to stigmatize them, and they want something that's fun and easy to use. And what we've tried to do is to listen to that advice, and building the robot, we've tried to make something that makes people smile.
Next time we'll have you with a hula skirt right around here.
Stevie has, I think, a range of 10 expressions. But what's really interesting is that if someone is teasing Stevie, the reaction from residents that we get to him, understanding what they've said and, acting sad is amazing.
530, 530. No, it hasn't got bingo players.
That's what you think.
We've been able to develop the robot to be able to do a range of tasks. So one of the kind of ones we started out with was bingo.
B14.
Which we know residents enjoy and provides an important form of cognitive stimulation. And we found that over the course of the last couple of weeks that people seem to really like the bingo sessions with the robot.
Bingo.
We're seeing far more engagement during the sessions, which has been really interesting.
That's a good bingo. Anyone else?
As soon as Stevie hit the ground, we really had to sit back and watch. We have people who would come to a program and sit at the back and side eye and take notes. And then each program, you would notice they were there again and they would move up a row and move up a row. And it was really interesting to see that as that happened.
The robot is kind of a catalyst for starting conversations, I guess, between people of different generations, which we think is quite interesting.
Would you like a glass of wine?
The big take home from this pilot is that the robot, while it's not perfect, is making a difference, and people want it here. And the fact that people want this robot gives me confidence that we're doing something right.
I got my money. See you at bingo.
I will call your numbers.
Okay, got it. That's good.
So that's Stevie the robot, and our team of engineers built Stevie from scratch. So in our lab, so completely built all the hardware around Stevie. So that would be the mechanical engineers that would do that, and then built all Stevie's wiring. So that would be the electronic engineers, and then software. So allowing Stevie to speak and move around. So that would be the software team. And we all actually got to see Stevie being deployed in the nursing home. So it's a really fun job. You get to see it go from actually being built to people using it. And that's something I really love about my job. And I suppose things were going great with Stevie up until last year. So when the pandemic hit, it was kind of hard to get into nursing homes ourselves, let alone get a robot in there. So we actually kind of, as a team, got together and thought, is there something that we can do to try and help with this pandemic? So we actually built a new robot called Violet. And you can see Violet here. So the idea was that we were seeing and hearing from the HSE that the coronavirus on surfaces was a huge problem in hospitals, and people were getting sick because rooms weren't being cleaned well enough. And we knew that and had looked into the fact that UV light, when it's shone on a surface, can actually kill coronavirus and many other viruses and bacteria. So the team got together and we built the robot Violet. So Violet autonomously moves around a hospital room. So that means that it doesn't need a human to actually control it. It can move around by itself and clean surfaces. And that was a really interesting project to work on. It was fascinating being able to be involved in the pandemic and kind of trying to create new technical solutions to try solve these problems. But I suppose if you had have said to me, 10 to 15 years ago when I was in school that this is what I would be doing, I would have had no idea. I was a little bit of a lost soul when I was in school. I never had an exact career that I knew I wanted to be in. But I guess I was always kind of interested in science and technology, and that kind of started out from my dad. He was an engineer and a scientist, and he was always, doing little science projects with me. We'd go around the house and try to find bits and pieces to make some science projects. So this first picture here is an example of a little light bulb Morse code electrical circuit that I created with him. And that was the first time I kind of realized that, you know, I thought science was cool and I really liked it. But I guess going into secondary school, I had always thought that if you wanted to work in technology or if you wanted to work in science, that you needed to, you know, do all science subjects and you needed to have applied maths and all these certain subjects. But I actually did, you know, biology and home economics and geography, and I didn't do physics or chemistry. And you know, people had kind of said to me that, well, maybe engineering mightn't be suited towards you because you're not doing these subjects. And I'm really glad I didn't listen to those people. So I decided that, you know, I'm not exactly sure what I want to do, but I know that I want to work kind of maybe in technology, maybe in engineering, something kind of technical. And so I decided then to put down engineering on my CAO form, and I got engineering in DCU. And now I didn't exactly know that I wanted to be an engineer, but I knew that engineering was a good base degree to have, that I could move into other STEM subjects or even move into business or finance. And that's the great thing about engineering or many STEM subjects, is that you can move around quite a bit. So I went to DCU to study engineering, and while I was studying there, I decided that I definitely didn't want to be an engineer. But I finished out the degree anyway, and I'm really glad I did, because in my final year, I got my first taste at a software project. That was for my final year project, and I knew that I really liked software development and writing code. So coming out of the engineering degree, I was a little bit worried that, you know, would I have to go back and do another 4-year degree to get into computer science? And that wasn't the case. I just had to do a 6-month kind of conversion course. And because I had learned a lot of the basic skills in engineering, I could apply them to computer science, which was really great. So after that conversion course, I got my first job, and it was an IT position at a company called Etsy. And they're a really cool company. It's kind of like an online marketplace, a little bit like Amazon, but they do kind of more handmade goods. And this picture here is me on my first day at Etsy. And my first day was actually in New York. So I got to fly over to New York and I got to work there for a month, and then come back to Dublin. And I got to work in loads of different countries. So I got to travel to San Francisco, to London, Paris, Berlin. I got to travel quite a bit, being on the IT team. And I also was able to move into different teams. So I got to work on the software team and on the web ops team. And I got a lot of experience there. And that's the great thing about, you know, if you pick a company and pick a job role in one technical aspect, a lot of the times within the company, you can move around teams and get experience in different areas. So your first job doesn't really have to be, you know, the exact job that you want to do at that company. So that was really great. But I guess after working there for 2 or 3 years, I kind of was seeing the really cool stuff that people were doing with AI and data analytics and machine learning, and this kind of idea that we can use data to be able to predict things that humans don't know. And that really interested me. So I decided then to quit my lovely job at Etsy and go back to study in UCD. So I then got my master's, which is just a year-long degree. And because I had finished out my mechanical engineering degree, I was able to do this. So I got my master's degree in computer science, specializing in AI. And coming out of that, I got a job as a consultant, which meant I was doing data analytics in kind of the insurance and banking sectors. And that was a really good experience. But I suppose working in that kind of more corporate area and kind of just more finance and corporate, kind of I realized that that wasn't really suited towards me. When I worked at Etsy, it was just a little bit more informal. Like you could go into work wearing runners and jeans. And I know that might seem like a small thing, but it is quite important for you to feel comfortable in your work environment and, you know, pick a job that is accurate towards what kind of work environment do you like. And so I decided after a very short 3 months that the corporate world wasn't really for me. And that's what led me to work at Akara and join them just as they were starting as a company. So I really realized that I wanted to work in something that was kind of new and something that no one had done before. And robotics was definitely that area. And then also I wanted to work in kind of a more informal capacity. And I wanted to work for a smaller kind of company that wasn't a big corporate company. So a startup was perfect for me. And I guess to give you a bit of background about my average day, I don't really have an average day. There's a lot to do when you're working at a startup because it's a really small team. But I guess our team kind of, as I said, there's the mechanical engineers that build the actual robot, and the electronic engineer that wire the robot, and the software engineer that writes the software. So whenever we're building a new robot or a new version of a robot, we all get together as a team and we kind of design and plan out how that robot will look. And there's a lot of time put into that. So a lot of my time is actually spent speaking with other people on my team and kind of figuring out with them what I need to do with software and what they need to do with, say, mechanical engineering or with electronic engineering. So once we have kind of team planning and we have a design on a higher level, and I know what the software needs to look like, we break apart as a software team and design and architect what the software can look like. And that's really interesting as well, because we get to, split out different jobs and we can work together. And I really get to collaborate quite a bit with other software developers. And then I suppose a lot of my time, as you can see me here in the middle picture, is spent in front of the computer, actually coding. So I'll write a piece of code. Say, for example, if our Violet robot needs to move around autonomously from one point to another, I'll write a piece of software that can make the robot do that. And then I'll run it on the robot and test in the lab. And I really like that, because the thing I love about coding is when you write a piece of code, you then can see straight away what it does and the results. And that's something that I love about coding. But I guess also quite a bit of my day or days are spent actually testing in the environment. So once the robot's tested in the lab, then we bring it to, say, a hospital, and we need to test it in the hospital. And so I really like being able to go out on site and actually see our robots in action. That's something I love about my job too. And then also when we're testing in hospitals, I get to speak with users. So I get to see firsthand what people think of the technology and if they have any improvements that need to be made. And then I can go back and we can start again with designing the new improvements and then coding them. So I really love that kind of development process. And I love the fact that I get to be part of all those processes. So a lot of the time, I think people can think if you work in tech or if you work as a software developer, you're on your own in front of a computer all day. And that's definitely not the case. You can be part of all these different elements that go into writing the code and producing a product that is based on code. And that's something that I really love. But I guess to just kind of finish up and why I think STEM is important and why I think you should choose STEM. I suppose you're learning, if you pick a STEM subject like technology or science or maths, you're really learning fundamental skills that you can apply to loads of different areas, and you can kind of work really anywhere in the world because you're not tied down to one area. So for example, with law, if you're studying law, it might be hard for you to kind of bring that to a different country or use that somewhere else. And that's something that I like, that I can use my skills anywhere in the world. And it's also a highly in demand skill to have, and people are always crying out for anyone with a STEM degree. Probably one of my favorite things is having flexible working conditions. So I can really choose my own hours. I don't have to work, a 9-to-5 job. I can work in the evenings or I can work in the mornings. Or for example, yesterday my dog was barking at me and going crazy, and I was able to take an hour or two out to walk him and then just finish up my work later at night. Whereas in some other subjects or some other jobs that you're kind of, it's more time based rather than goal based. So you're in 9 to 5 and you can't just chop and change your hours. Another thing is working in tech, you get to work from home a lot of you like. I know that everyone kind of does that now, but that was definitely something that was always viable in a technical field. Also, you can work in loads of different industries. So I've had experience in banking, insurance, in agricultural tech, in loads of different areas. So with the STEM subject, it's not like if you're a doctor or a nurse or something like that, you can work in any different industry. And I guess the most important thing, or that the most important thing to me, is that I feel that working in or being involved in a STEM subject, it's really exciting work. So you're really working on things that can change the world, and you get to see firsthand that the effects that it has, and you're kind of doing something that no one else has done, in my case anyway. And that's something that really motivates me and excites me. So thanks so much for listening. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them. Sorry, you're muted.
Thank you so much for that, Niamh. That was a really insightful presentation, and I feel like we really got an insight into your career in technology and what any career in technology could include. So, like you said, I'd encourage anyone that has any questions based upon Niamh's presentation, or any questions based on a career in technology, please leave them in the chat, and we will try and get round to them. So I suppose just to start off the question section, and I know you talked about your job there and how diverse it can be, and all the different, I suppose, your day-to-day activities, and how nothing's ever the same. But what is your favorite part of your job?
So originally it was actually kind of the coding and that aspect of it. I kind of did like just being in a room by myself and coding. But then once we had the robot built and I actually got to see people using it, I loved going into the hospital and speaking with people and like kind of training them how to use it and communicating the technology. And then once they kind of said, we don't like this or we do like this, I loved actually going back, changing a certain part of the robot and then bringing it back to them, and them being excited by how they had some input into the product. And I suppose I get to do that because we're a very small company, and I actually interact face to face with people. But even when I was working at Etsy, like software teams did really get a high out of seeing new features being pushed. So say if something wanted to change on the website, it's kind of exciting whenever all the developers get together and write the code and then push it, and you get to see your change on the website. And so I think that's something that a lot of software developers like, that being able to see firsthand what you've built. And I suppose another thing I like about the working on the Violet project and what I'm doing now is that I actually get to interact with people in other areas of STEM. So because we're doing microbiology testing, and we're testing our robot to see if it can kill viruses, we do a lot of work now with people in the science field, so people in the School of Microbiology in Trinity, and I get to learn lots from them about how you test for viruses, and I guess their area and how they work. It's great that you can you're very involved in that as well, and you get to see other areas of STEM in your role.
Yeah, and I think that is something that's very appealing, and we've heard across a number of our talks that an awful lot of STEM careers are so multidisciplinary, and you can get an exposure to so many other different aspects of STEM, no matter what career you end up in. I suppose, considering our audience here this morning, is there any advice you would give to your 18-year-old self?
Yeah, oh God, that's a really good question. Yeah, I guess, it's important to listen to people's advice. When I was going through school, I had some career advice that maybe, I shouldn't do a STEM subject, that it might subjects that I chose in school might not be suited towards it. And then when I actually got into college, I realized that, that advice wasn't really correct. And I'm glad that I didn't listen to those people. So I easily could have. But I guess just if you feel that you're suited towards something, you may as well just try it. And if it doesn't work out, you can always go back and move into something else. I always thought when I was filling out my CAO form, this is it, like this is going to be my career now. And, it's going to be really hard to move out of move into anything else. But it really wasn't the case. Even if you get into one degree, you can actually move around to different degrees as well, and there's always a back door into something. So that is how I kind of even got into computer science. So I guess I would say just trust your gut and try out like any subjects or anything you think you're good at.
Definitely, and I think that is an important message, to keep an open mind. I suppose at the age of 18, you may not know what is, in store for you in the future, nor does anyone. So that is a very, very nice piece of advice. I suppose, fortunately, from here in your career and the steps you've taken to get to your current position, you've had an opportunity to work at a number of different companies, and now currently you're at a startup. What sort of additional difficulties come with working at a startup? I know you mentioned some of the positives, like more flexible hours and a more casual work environment, but I suppose that there must be challenges that come along with that too.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot of responsibility. So, for example, if something in my department isn't working or I don't know how to do something, I can't really go to a manager or someone and say, I can't do this, can I get help? Or I can go to other team members and ask for advice, but you're kind of responsible for your area, which is something I like, but also something that it can be a little bit stressful sometimes. And I guess also, although you don't work specific hours, because your job is a little more goal-based, that then you have to be motivated to get something done. And there's no one watching over you to say you need to work for this amount of time. And it's more up to you to get something done, which is great sometimes. But if you're feeling unmotivated during a week, it can be hard to kind of get yourself back in the zone to do that. It's also, I suppose, with a startup, things are always changing, which is something I like, but sometimes people don't like that. So sometimes people like to have a clear path to a goal and, it to be stuck in that way and, not to have things chopping and changing. Whereas with a startup, you're constantly changing what you're working on. For example, last year we changed the robot we were working on and built a completely new robot. So that's something that excites me, but then sometimes I feel maybe I'd prefer to have a little more stability and have something more concrete that you're working on. So yeah, I guess they're the kind of main downsides of it.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting hearing you talk about your current position. And I suppose as this week is Tech Week, I'm sure students at home have heard lots about different tech careers. But yours is very interesting, in particular that you have an opportunity to work at the cutting edge. You talked about moving to a different robot based on the current requirements of people at the moment. What is it like working with the newest of new technologies?
It's really interesting, and you get to kind of, so for example with the robots, I can kind of help decide what direction it should go in, and because you don't really know how it should look or what way it should work. So with Stevie the robot, we had never seen a robot in a nursing home before, so we had no idea what it should do, how it should act. And so a lot of my time was actually spent in the nursing home and controlling the robot, trying to see how people will talk to the robot. And that was interesting because, I was able to garner more information about how that would look. But, again, you can't really, if you get stuck or you don't know how it should act, there's no one to follow, or you can't really just see what someone else has done and copy that. So I guess that's kind of the downside. But all in all, it's really exciting. being able to work in an area that is really new. And I do think we'll be seeing more robots in the future and people using it more and it being more normal. And I guess I'm excited, to get to that point and look back and say, I was at the beginning of this and, I was working on robots when they weren't around quite a lot. So, and I know there's areas in science now that are probably going to be like that. I think a lot of people will be really interested in virology now and microbiology and things like that. Like I'd say a lot of people are going to move towards that because it is actually a really interesting topic. Like I've even learned a bit of it over the past year. And I was nearly considering, trying to move into that area, but it definitely is. I think science and technology now, ever since the pandemic, is going to be even more appealing to people because you can see it really has kind of saved us, like the vaccine being made in a year. And I can only imagine what it was like to be on teams like that where you're making this thing that everyone is relying on and everyone is dependent on, and it can be really exciting.
Definitely. And I suppose you touched on it briefly there that in your role you're introducing robotics into an area where previously they wouldn't have been in place. I suppose in the next coming years, where do you see the robotics industry going, or what different areas would you see robotics being used which they aren't currently being used in?
Yeah, I guess everywhere. So I think we're starting to see them now. Like you can even, there's an Irish company that are doing drone deliveries. And there's in hospitals, it's becoming even more normal. So we're having, little robots that bring equipment from one place of the hospital to another. So we have robots that are kind of doing these physical tasks. But what I find really interesting and where I think it might take a bit longer to get to, but is having robots like communicating or speaking with people, because that's actually a lot harder because we as humans, for example, know when it's our turn to speak. We know who's around us. We can kind of gauge from someone's body language if they're interested in speaking with us. It's really hard to actually program that into a robot because there's so many different possibilities, and it just seems so far away for me. So I first see it in kind of areas where it's a physical task where a robot has to bring something or move something, and then I think after that it will kind of turn towards what's called kind of like the social robotics. So having a robot that can interact with people is a really difficult thing to do, and we definitely found that with Stevie was that even simply saying hello to a specific person, remembering who that person is, all things that humans find easy to do are really difficult to program into robots. So I think that's a really interesting area if anyone is specifically interested in robotics. And definitely social robotics is somewhere that is really challenging, and anything you do there is going to be at the forefront.
Definitely. And I suppose hearing you talk about the future of robotics, and something that has came up an awful lot, and especially during Tech Week, has been the discussion of AI. I suppose I assume that has a large role to play in the future of robotics also.
Yeah, definitely. So for example, our navigation system is considered AI, and anything that the robot does on its own is AI. And then there's other areas where AI and what's called machine learning are used not in robotics, and that's probably a little bit ahead of where it is in robotics, because with robotics you have to build the hardware and it's a lot more complicated. There's a lot more to it, and I feel that probably the AI is quite advanced in robotics, but having people actually adopt robots and taking robots into their current working system is really hard to do. So that's probably why apps and things and data analytics and things on Facebook and things like that type of AI is probably a little bit ahead of where robotics is, because you still have to build the hardware and there's still a lot more to it. But I definitely see it catching up in the next few years.
Another thing you touched on was the fact that you have to work an awful lot with people from different disciplines and different teams. and I suppose not traditionally STEM skills, things like communications and such. How many, I suppose, skills outside of your traditional writing code and stuff would you use on a daily basis?
A lot. Yeah, so in a startup, because there's kind of fewer people, and there's a lot of things that you have to do. So I would have a lot of involvement in, actually setting up the company, learning kind of about the legalities and contracts. I would also have a bit to do with the accounting. So, organizing payroll for paying people. Everyone on the team would have some experience in that. Communication. So, we're trying to raise funding. So we need to be able to communicate what we do at Akara to people with business backgrounds and all other backgrounds. So a lot of that, and I actually quite enjoy that, is, trying to communicate the technical things that Violet does, but in a user-friendly way. And also a lot of our time is actually spent doing press. So, speaking with, whenever we launch a new robot, we have this kind of press launch where everyone on the team is speaking to members of the press and, trying to, I suppose, market Violet. We have for Stevie, we had Facebook, a Facebook for Stevie and Instagram for Stevie. So even down to social media marketing, everyone kind of is hands-on at a startup. So it's really great if you are coming out of a degree and you aren't really sure what you want to do. A startup is really good for, dipping your toes in the water in loads of different areas.
Excellent. And I'm just conscious of time at this point. We are getting towards the end of our show today. And just one final question, I suppose. Where do you see yourself and, I suppose, Akara in 5 years' time?
So I hope to see Akara kind of producing robots on scale in 5 years' time. I think we're really close to that. We have a small number of robots working really well. But I hope to see us having, an office in maybe the US and us manufacturing these robots and people actually using them. And so I definitely think in 5 to 10 years that will be possible. And I suppose me specifically, still, I suppose, leading kind of software development, but also more involvement maybe in the business side of Akara. So that's something that I'm also interested in. So maybe not as much technical role, but moving into the business side of things.
Excellent. I think that's always a nice question to end on. And here, I suppose, an optimistic look into the future.
Yeah. Right.
So, thank you, Niamh. That was excellent. And thank you for all your great questions. Another huge thank you to Lisa for doing the ISL interpretation today. I hope you all enjoyed today's discussion. If you want to learn more about STEM careers in technology, visit our website at www.smartfutures.ie. There we have interviews with other STEM professionals discussing their careers and their journey they took to achieve it. There is also general information about other STEM careers so you can discover what is most suited for you. If you missed out on any of our previous This is STEM career talks, they can be found on our YouTube channel. To begin in February, we were joined by Rahima Ahmed to discuss a career in civil engineering. And last month, we were joined by Kieran Egan from Abbott to learn more about a career in science. Also, check us out on social media. For more information on how to win a pair of Apple AirPods, visit our Instagram at SmartFuturesIreland. Follow the account and tag 2 of your friends under the most recent competition post to be entered. We'll be announcing our winner next week. Once again, a massive thank you to Niamh and Lisa and everyone who contributed during today's discussion. We'll be live again next month to discuss careers in maths with another industry professional. We hope that you will join us again. Bye, everyone.